Tony, close the door, please.
Good evening, everyone. Just please be patient while we get everybody to join before we get started. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started here momentarily. Give me another minute or so and we'll get started. We're still having people join.
You never learn.
I'm a nervous peer.
No, do you need a pen?
Yeah, I would take it.
Hi, everybody. We're just getting ready to get started. Just give us another minute or two and we'll get started. For those of you who are new to this, my name is Gwendolyn Mayer and I am the archivist at the Hudson Library Historical Society. Thank you for joining us this evening for one of our virtual author events. This evening we have the wonderful Katy Tur and her husband, Tony Dokoupil, who are going to speak. But before we get started, I just want to do a couple quick advertisements. Katy's book is absolutely phenomenal, everybody. I read it. I loved it. I got through it very quickly. I thought it was wonderful. It's called Rough Draft. I would encourage you all to read it. And it's her second book. So if you really like it, go get her first one. But the second one, I think, really speaks to her professional juggling of her career, her kids, her family, her past. We'll get there. Also in August, I want to tell you we have forthcoming programs. We have Chris Wallace, the journalist. We have Lori Garver, the former director of NASA, who's going to speak, Linda Castillo, and Eric J. Dolan. I would encourage you all to look at the library website and find out when those programs are in August and join. We kind of have a slower summer. We do have Jennifer Cheverini in July, but as many of you know, July is kind of the traveling month in this town. And so people take vacations and we kind of slow down, but we encourage children very much to participate in the summer reading club, as well as you guys can participate in the adult reading club. So without further ado, I want you to welcome Katy and Tony, and they're going to talk about Katy's book, Rough Draft. I can hold it up, but I think it fades away in this world of Zoom. But please, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. I would encourage you all to get the book at the library or purchase it at the Learned Owl. All of you know it's there on Main Street and it's our independent bookstore that we support in this town. So without further ado, I'm handing it off to the two. Tony, Katy.
Hello.
Gwendolyn,
Hi.
thank you very much. Thank
You're
you.
most
I'll give you a round of applause. Thank you all for joining. I think we got a good number of participants. I really appreciate everybody giving us a little bit of your evening. We'll try to make this interesting, and where it's not interesting, we'll try to hand it over to you relatively quickly. So if you don't like my questions, because I'm married to her and I might be a little bit biased, we'll go with your questions and that'll help things along.
This is certainly going to be the realest of the book chats so far. So congratulations.
First, a note of housekeeping. Typically, I would not comment on the brick wall behind me because it would be the most boring thing imaginable. But tonight, it's actually interesting because Katy has just appeared on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. She'll be on tonight, but they tape late in the afternoon, early evening. And so for timing, we were actually in the green room of The Daily Show.
With all of their delicious snacks as well.
So that's not just a brick wall, it's a Daily Show brick wall, which I think is pretty cool. So Gwendolyn did a good job of setting the book up. I will try to ruin that good job by saying a few more things about it. I think it's a memoir with three parts to it. One element of it is Katy becoming a parent, us meeting, our marriage, our meet cute, birth, the whole just starting a family part. That's one part of it. Another part of it is becoming a journalist and then finding yourself at a crossroads in your career, kind of quarter life crisis, And then the third part of it, outside of
A
your
little more than a
professional
quarter
work,
life, but okay.
and the third part of it, and I think the biggest part of it, and the part that might have the broadest interest, is the story of your childhood, which is the story of your childhood, while at the same time being kind of a story of how we got to this moment in journalism, because you're a live daily news anchor, and your parents really pioneered the form of live breaking news. They weren't the first people ever to do something with a helicopter in news, but they really were the first ones to do something interesting. They shot the O.J. Simpson slow speed chase. They were the first ones on the scene. They had it exclusively for 20 minutes. They shot the beginning of the LA riot, the Reginald Denny beating the truck driver hit with a brick, and the subsequent riots. They are credited with shooting the very first live police pursuit on American television, which succeeded in beating Matlock and convincing every news director in America that live, bloody breaking news, regardless of facts or information or context, could actually dominate and bring in viewers. So your parents did that, and they raised you. Why'd you want to go back into it?
The good thing about having you as a host for this and a moderator is that I know you've read the book. I forced you to read the book multiple times. I forced you to live through the edits of the book, so you do know it in and out. So they raised me, yes. Was there a question in that long intro?
Yeah. Why did you want to go back into it? Why did you find yourself needing to pinpoint not only the birth of this moment we're in, but literally your own birth?
So you know this intimately. I, in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm sure there are some of you out there who feel similarly, started to think that, I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. I felt really isolated. We were doing broadcasts. Well, you only were for a few months. But I did my broadcast of my national show for over a year inside my basement alone, just me and the camera and the lights and the voices in my head, which some of them were real. They were the control room or the person I was talking to on television. Others were the just ugly voices in my own head. And I started to wonder, in this moment where we are in a global pandemic, where people are dying, we are not agreeing on whether the virus exists. I mean, there are portions of this country that would say that it didn't exist, it was all made up. So on a life or death issue, we still couldn't find a way to come together in this country. And that scared me. And it also scared me as a journalist, because for some reason, journalism, and there's, it's just, we can get into this, journalism wasn't effective. We couldn't as journalists tell people, convince people that it was scary. Convince people of the truth and the facts. And so I started to think, what am I doing with my life? And in the middle of this, my mom sends me a hard drive, and it's giant. It's the size of a small microwave. And in that hard drive are thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of news videotape. Every video my parents shot over their 20 plus year career. And then also all of my childhood videos, because my parents, when they didn't have the news camera on the news, they trained it on the family. And in it was basically my life in this piece of computer equipment. And I had been running from all that this piece of machinery contained, this metal box contained. And I realized that if I was going to figure out a way to go forward, to make it through the pandemic, to figure out what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, I had to open up that metal box, and I had to confront a lot of the stuff that was in there. And it was something like it felt to me at the time like a Pandora's box.
And I remember distinctly an evening, it feels like winter in my memory, where we spent a long, long night going through a lot of that video together, and it was emotional.
And some of it was really fun.
Some of it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's LA in the 80s and 90s. So there's a certain just like sex appeal from the palm trees and the colors, and like it's all professional grade footage, which is incredible. I want to go to the crisis part of this, because a lot of people who are here, they like you, they watch you on TV, they think you're great, and they may not realize that during the pandemic, you contemplated walking away, quitting.
Yeah, I did.
Why? And where are you with it now?
Because again, that we couldn't find a way to come together as a country. And
why is that your fault?
I worried that journalists, that we could be making things worse, because the noise level was so loud that instead of finding a way to get to a common ground, we were just pushing each other farther and farther away. Please keep your
I have
pen.
a pen. I have a
And
pen
I'm
here. She
wearing
has
white
white
pants.
pants, and she's afraid I'm gonna. And then I'm
you're
like
gonna draw on
I'm
me.
torturing her actually with the pen because I'm a child. Okay.
You are a
All right, here
child.
we go. I put the pen down.
And so I worried, I've spent a lot of time covering politics. I've spent a lot of time at political rallies for Donald Trump in particular. And there was a few that were, nagging me during the pandemic. One of them was a rally I went to in Macon, Georgia. And another one was a rally I went to in Pennsylvania. And the Macon, Georgia one, I went there with a view to try and figure out what the disconnect was, why so many people just chose not to believe journalists, why they just would go to some dark corner of the internet or not some dark corner of the internet or believe something they read on Facebook over believing a news organization. And I got a lot of answers where people just said that, we were liars and it was our intent to mislead the public and that we had corporate masters and, there was all this conspiracy there. And that was disheartening. And I didn't feel like there was a way to convince the person standing across from me that I myself, Katy Tur, journalist for NBC News and MSNBC, was not lying to them about the number of people who had died in the pandemic, or was not lying to them about the number of lies that Donald Trump had told over his administration or basic policy facts. And that scared me. And then the other thing that really scared me was a rally in Pennsylvania when it was the summer before 2020, the election, and Donald Trump had been saying that there's no way he could lose. And I went and I spoke to people and I was just going to take their temperature and see what they believed. Do you think Donald Trump, what would you do if Donald Trump lost? And their answers were, it's impossible for him to lose. There's no way he can lose. And I said, but what if he does lose? It's an election. He could lose. No, it's rigged if he loses. There's absolutely no way. All of my friends, look at all my friends here. They're all here for Donald Trump. Of course he's going to win. And I said, okay, fine. If you really believe that, if you really believe that democracy has been stolen from you, if Donald Trump loses, what are you going to do about it? Because that's a big thing to really believe, that democracy is being taken away.
It's a thing literally you fight for, right?
Exactly.
It is one of the good reasons for a fight.
If you really, really believe it, what would you do? And I asked a bunch of people, and one guy in the crowd, they would kind of dodge the question. One guy in the crowd said, I would do whatever it takes. So what does that mean? And he said, I'd take up arms if necessary. And it turns out that he was one of 20 million people or so who believe that force or violence is necessary to protect democracy right now. And that's what happened on January 6th. And I got worried that we are in such a scary state in this country, that's at such a scary point. Is it not best for me just to hang it up and say, okay, let someone else take the reins?
Yeah. And the more you struggle, the system, the process, the way the press is supposed to function in our society, right, is that we gather the best information, we vet it, we provide an accurate and clear picture to a public, and then an educated populace makes the best decision based on their values, right? Yeah. We provide the facts, they provide the values. And something along the way is broken down now, and the facts are not sufficient.
And you and I have this conversation a lot. These are our pillow talks, talking about the state of journalism and the media. And one of the things we discuss is how it has been done to us in a lot of ways. There are bad actors out there who have tried to tear down our credibility for their own purposes. A lot of politicians who have said, don't blame me, blame the journalists. I'm doing everything right. Those guys are lying to you. Newt Gingrich did it to great effect in the 90s. And, you could take that from there to Donald Trump, who did it to great effect, even greater effect, in 2015, 2016, and up until now. And so while I don't think we're responsible for a lot of the way that we've lost trust, or a lot of the trust that we've lost, I do think that it's worth looking back along the way and saying, what could we have done better?
Yeah.
Is there something that we could have done early on to make people trust us more? And that also, to tie it back into the book, brought me to something my parents did in the 90s. And that was something that a lot of their colleagues say was the downfall of TV news. And my parents don't really deny it, and I don't really deny it either. and it wasn't intentional, but they started covering live police chases. If they didn't cover the very first one, they covered the second one, and they covered everyone after that. They popularized the media. They proved that these chases were ratings getters. Everybody wanted to see it. It beat Matlock when they broke into television and aired this live. And so this reality TV voyeuristic view of the news as entertainment started to take over. And if you take that to its logical extension, it's kind of where we are right now with the way that we cover Donald Trump's rallies and the way we cover politics in general, sometimes without context. In the moment, just say whatever it is, get it on the air now, faster than the competition.
Right. And with politics in particular, it is much easier to cover what this party said and that party said, and harder to cover the underlying policy suggestion and vet it for effectiveness, for example.
It is difficult.
And so you do what's easier. And I don't know what the alternative is, other than, we're not going to return to an era where everyone waits till 6:30 before the news is on, or waits to the papers out in the morning.
You do want to slow things down. I would love to say, okay, we're the 24-hour news cycle, maybe we should make it a 6-hour news cycle or a 10-hour news cycle.
Never going to happen.
But I don't know how to pull it back, because now we have social media. So there's another medium that's competing for attention, another now, hot takes immediately platform. I mean, to the point where, say you're threading a tweet. If you've done this before, you're threading a tweet. Hey, this is a thread. We're going to go from top to bottom. I'm going to tell you a story. Before you get to the bottom of the story, you'll have people nitpicking things that you said in the beginning. And they don't even give you the time to finish your thought on social media before people start to tear you down. And that is emblematic of the culture we're living in now. People don't want to wait for the full story. They just it's almost like they want a reason to get angry.
Yeah. Twitter's not real life, as you often tell me.
I know, I've deleted it from my phone.
It's not real life. Okay, so that's a bit of the professional struggle that you were facing and why you wrote the book, but there's also the personal struggle, and I think it's brought about in part, as often happens, you get married, you have kids, you become the thing that your parents once were, which is a young working parent, and you start to think about how they did it.
Yeah.
How did they do it?
I don't know. They did incredible things. My brother and I were young, we spent more time in the helicopter than we did in our own beds. I mean, I really grew up in a helicopter covering these stories alongside my parents.
Your mom at one point told me that they put the car seats in the helicopter. Like the little kid car seats.
We'd cover fires over Malibu, and the flames would get so close that I could feel it on my shins. I had an unhealthy obsession with backyard pools. Just like everybody in LA seemed to have a backyard pool except me, and I really, really wanted one. So we had this really unique childhood, and my parents were a bit loosey-goosey with us. I mean, they were helicopter parents technically, but they were not helicopter parents figuratively. They would leave us basically just at the airport in the terminal, and they would say, okay, we'll be back in a few hours. Here's a couple of wrinkled dollars for the vending machine. And I remember trying to straighten out those dollars so that the vending machine would actually take it and I could get a bag of Skittles. At one point, and this really shocked you. For me, it was just a shoulder shrug. They were covering a story. There was a horse stuck in a ravine, and they were covering it in the helicopter, but they needed to get closer. In order to get a closer shot, they had to land the helicopter and then hike down the ravine. And so my brother and I were with them. They landed the helicopter and they said, well, we can't bring these two little kids down to the ravine with us. What are we going to do with them? They just dropped us off at some stranger's house. And they said, okay, we'll be back in a little bit. Just chill here for a few minutes. They just left us with strangers. And when I look at my little kids, I think, oh my God, I could never do that. But then there's a part of me that laments that we live in a world
we're more fearful,
where we're so scared,
fearful.
We're not more trusting of strangers.
Is
that crazy to say?
We're more fearful. I want to talk about the period of time when your parents were not covering a story. So you light up, everyone can see it when you talk about LA and the helicopter and the professional deeds that your parents did, their work. But it's not giving anything away. It's in the beginning of the book, in the prologue, essentially, where you talk about how they rose from nothing. This company did not exist, did astounding things, and then lost it all. The helicopter, their marriage, the money that they had earned. They never owned a house. It amounted to nothing. No assets were left.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Not no assets. There was a videotape librry. But I hear
Okay,
what you're
all right,
saying. I hear what
okay,
you're
but
saying.
there was no, yeah, and arguably they paid for your for your schooling, but not even college. The money just evaporated.
Yeah, it was
good times and then bad. It was a classic
times.
American story. Why did it go away, and how did what sent it away affect you as a child?
It is a very strange thing to be living a high life and then to be living a very low life. I mean, I learned to not answer the phone because that was the bill collectors calling. That certainly was stressful. The reason it went away, I mean, they were unbeatable. Nobody could beat them in the skies. They just knew where to be. They got everything they covered was basically an exclusive. They were the first to find OJ on the Slow Speed Pursuit. They covered the Reginald Denny beating in the LA riots. They just happened to know the intersection where things were going to pop off because they understood the city in a way.
Not wanting to actually. So you write in the book.
Hold on, I'm telling you. But the reason why I think that it all came tumbling down was because my dad was filled with rage. And there was this ugly side of my dad that my dad never dealt with. And instead of going back and doing what I'm doing right now and excavating the past, my dad just forged forward. My dad, had a terrible childhood. His dad was terrible, cut off a part of his ear, was abusive, was a gambler, would beat my dad up. My dad ran away from home when he was 15. And then he had me when he was 23. I mean, he was so, so young. He never dealt with what he had. And there's more, wait. He never dealt with what he experienced. And he brought that, the cycle continued as the cycle does. And so the rage didn't just come out at home, it would come out in public or in a way that the news directors or his bosses would experience. And I think ultimately they just became a bit of a liability and too much to handle. So the contract got cut underneath their noses, their staff got hired away from them. And, my dad had a heart attack at this time, my grandmother died. All of these things converged on this one moment and they stopped. It was like, looking back, it feels like it was a watch in an explosion. It just froze. They just froze.
And as you tell this story of the past, you are talking about your father using the pronoun he. A key moment in the book, which is a beautiful and unusual thing to read, is the moment your father calls you and tells you, I'm not a he, I'm a she, and I'm transitioning.
Yeah.
And that is the explanation for the rage, for the discomfort, for the inability to be at home in the body and life I was in.
Yeah, it came as a surprise to me in the moment because my dad had he wore bomber jackets and flew a helicopter and punched cops.
Literally, lots of video evidence of him and cops getting into it.
Or the cops punched him. There's a documentary that has all this footage.
Whirlybird's really good.
It's very good.
The book's better, but now they're both very good.
And so the conversation came as a surprise to me. And it was a moment in our relationship where it felt like it could turn one way or another. I mean, we already had a very strained relationship. I had inherited so much good from my dad in terms of my journalism career and who I am and how I cover the news and my ability to stand tall in the face of, taunts from, say, a politician, and my love of the news. But I also was angry at all of the abuse from the childhood and all of the anger that my dad never resolved. And I had been carrying that with me and running away from Los Angeles, running away from my past, literally just running. I moved to New York and then I moved to London. I had no intention of ever, I was going to live overseas forever. I still have no intention of living back in Los Angeles. And so when my dad said, I'm not Bob Tur, I'm first Hannah and then Zoe, she also said that everything that Bob Tur did is gone. Bob Tur is dead. This is where all the rage came from. That rage is gone now. And I'm a new person and everything is going to be better. And I remember in that moment thinking, okay, fine, but let me bring up the thing that I've always been really scared to bring up with you, which is all of the abuse that we endured as kids and my mom endured, my brother and I endured. emotional and physical at times. Let's confront it. Let's get it out there. Let's talk about it. Let's exercise this demon so that we can move on and have a new and different relationship with this new person you say you are. I'm here for it. Let's do it. I'm supportive. Let's go. But let's talk about it. And my dad just didn't, she didn't want to. She didn't want to talk about it. She thought and still feels that the stuff that Bob Tur did is gone, dead and buried.
And so now you are estranged.
Yeah.
And I think one of the very delicate and amazing things that you do in the book is you are alive to the idea that it takes two to have an estrangement. It takes two people.
Because I wonder about this.
You're not perfect in this.
There are mornings where I wake up and I say I had a dream about my dad, and then I look at you and I say, am I the one in the wrong here? Did I do something wrong? Could I have done something better? Because estrangement goes both ways. It takes one person to pick up a phone, and no one's picking up the phone. There was a moment I detail in the book where, I haven't seen my dad in person.
So many people have this sort of issue.
In 10 years.
10 years, wow.
10 years. And there's a moment in the book where I see him her from a distance at my brother's graduation. And I think that this is going to be the moment where we, talk in person, where she meets my husband, never met before. We tell my dad that we're trying for a kid, but she never comes over. She leaves after the graduation and I don't follow her. And, I just wonder, is that going to be a moment that will haunt me forever? I don't know. Don't get teary. You can make me.
I'm not getting teary, but I will tell you, as a professional interviewer, one of the tactics you can sometimes use is to not fill the silent space.
As also a professional interviewer, I know that tactic.
And so you're not falling into it.
No.
I think people who. My favorite part of the book, because I work for CBS, I think, is a middle chapter in which Katy takes the lion of broadcast television, Walter Cronkite, Uncle Walter, and reveals some facts from his biography that are not really the things you put on journalism prizes or on resumes.
So let me tell you why.
Could you just tell that story?
Let me tell you why. So,
go into that, please. Because I have his old job.
You're screaming in my ear. I often get compared to Walter Cronkite on Twitter, but not favorably. I mean, I have won the Walter Cronkite Award.
Everybody who works in television news gets a note that's from time to time
Walter
that says
Cronkite would be rolling over.
It is great.
And I get it. Walter Cronkite was amazing. And I do look up to Walter Cronkite, and I revere his journalism. I revere what he did with Watergate and how he laid it all out in one broadcast, when at the time it was just a bunch of disparate news items in the newspaper. He put it together for the country to see. He drew a line in the sand on Vietnam, called it a quagmire, and that war ended because of Walter Cronkite saying that it was a mess, arguably. But Walter Cronkite is also very lucky, because some of the things that he did are not remembered. And they are things that if I did them today, or any other journalist, or Tony, if they did them, they would be fired immediately and they would never live them down. I mean, he bugged the RNC. He bugged it, like listened in on a conversation in another room, I believe with a wiretap.
It was the first televised political convention, and a CBS producer put a microphone in the closet of the room where the Republicans were gathering and fed the intel to Walter on live television. Who then had the news. Imagine
if we did that today. He faked reaction shots in an interview with LBJ, and to make it look like he was giving a tougher interview than he actually was, raising an eyebrow at something instead of just, I imagine just looking placidly. And the only reason that didn't go to air was because LBJ's lawyers got wind of it and pushed back and said, you can't do this. You're not allowed to do that in our jobs. You're not allowed to fake the reaction shot. It's if you've seen broadcast news, the tear from William Hurt, that's not okay. It's a really big deal. And he took trips from TWA and or
No,
Pan Am,
yeah.
excuse me, Pan Am. You can't just take a trip from a company that you're likely to cover. That's an ethics violation. We are not allowed to do that. But if any of us did those things today, social media wouldn't let us live it down. It would be concrete, in stone. So while Walter Cronkite was this towering figure and deserves all the acclaim for it, it is important to remember that he was also human, and he was figuring it out, and he was trying his best.
He was benefiting from an era when not every mistake, even really serious ones that you would actually want people to remember, not every mistake was collected and ever present the next time you screw up. You could have a tomorrow and people could forget.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is interesting with Walter Cronkite is people think the media is divisive and partisan today, and they think Walter somehow had a big table in American life. But in fact, Republicans despised Walter Cronkite. If anybody on here or their parents was a Goldwater Republican, you might have somewhere in a box in the attic a pin that says "Stop Cronkite." They hated the guy.
Yeah, and the Nixon administration hated him as well, and there were Nixon allies who wished at the time that there was an alternative to what they called the liberal media, the left-wing media. And one of those Nixon allies was a guy named Roger Ailes. And we know what Roger Ailes went on to do.
So the reason I think you bring all this up is to make the case gently that journalists actually have become more professional, accountable to a higher standard, and more transparent than they were.
Transparency is so important.
Huge. All right, we are at the 30-minute mark. I will give a first call for questions from anyone out there.
I think Gwendolyn might have some.
Yes, Gwen has plenty. Hudson is a hard town. We got serious questions.
Good.
Very good.
This is from Allie. Says, I'm a huge fan, Tony. You're our morning companion, but tonight is about Katy. I remember in 2018, I was a student at the Fletcher School at Tufts, and you visited the Edward Morrow room at our school while we were headlining the Morrow Forum on issues in journalism. With the stories we heard today about your parents and the legacy and their pioneers like Edward Morrow left, what do you think this generation of broadcast journalists is leaving the generations to come?
Oh gosh, that is a really hard question. I think we are, I hope we find a way to pull back on the live breaking news coverage and to make sure more context is out there. I think our business is so rapidly changing right now, and everything is so immediate that we are in a pivotal moment to figure out how we go forward. What are we going to leave them? I hope we don't leave them a mess. I really hope, but it does feel like it's a bit of a mess out there. And it is so hard to navigate your job when you're also expected to engage on social media. And I think one of the good things might be that we were guinea pigs for it. And now there are organizations that are saying, we really don't want our journalists on Twitter. We really don't want them to be engaging full time. The New York Times has basically said this. The Washington Post just had a big drama about this. I've heard from my bosses, we would love it if you never tweeted, don't feel obligated to ever tweet. And it certainly made me feel more at liberty to back off on the tool. I mean, it's so helpful in a lot of ways. You can see what's happening. You can get verbates of things that you don't have accessible to you as quickly, but it's also so devoid of context, and it's such a risky place to try to engage. It's very hard to have meaningful conversations on social media. So hopefully we're the guinea pigs of it, and what we leave you is a better understanding of what not to do.
That leads into Terry's question, and she wants you to know she loved your first book. She's anxious to read your second one, but she wants to know if your bosses put limits on you in terms of your own opinions.
No.
Do you have basic autonomy at MSNBC? Are they, how restrictive are they of your voice?
So as a journalist, my opinion is not really at play. I mean, there's opinion programming on MSNBC, and it starts after my hour. It starts, I think, at 4 o'clock. And I know at 4 o'clock I say, I think, I know it does. I don't want to be an opinion journalist. I don't think my opinion is the most important opinion. I want to deliver you the information that you need, the context you need, to make an educated decision about what you do in your life in this country, who you vote for, how you go about your days, what issues are important in your town or in this nation or the world. I want to make you more informed. And that doesn't mean saying that both sides have an equal right to any issue. You know, if one side is saying the sky is falling and the other side is saying, no, everything's fine, it's sunny skies and great weather, you don't say, well, one side says this and one side says that. You weight the one that is telling the truth more. So being very clear about what's going on and making sure the truth is there, not just both sides, is important to me. Also, all of the context and analysis.
And I wanted to add, and what I was thinking about at first when you say there's no limitation.
I thought she was going to ask, did they put limits on your book? And I was going to say no.
Oh, but you know, something that a lot of people, I would say no one who doesn't work in the business would know necessarily, is that at NBC, at CBS, at NPR, at all these big media companies, there's the journalists and their editors and their seniors, but there's also a separate desk called a news standards desk.
And also the lawyers.
And there's also lawyers, but that's a whole nother. And what the standards department does is weigh questions of reporting on the most delicate and sensitive matters to make sure that your reporter at the Pentagon, it doesn't have the same source that your reporter on the House Security Committee has. So when you have two sources to confirm something, you actually have two sources, or when you need a third source, or when you want to do an extra degree of verifying. All of that goes on behind the scenes before anyone goes public.
They hold us all to a high standard.
And
That's why they're called the standards department.
And if you push past that or you get out of line there, it's a huge deal.
It's a problem.
It's a huge deal.
And you will be sanctioned.
Yeah.
You will be sanctioned.
So I just, in terms of transparent, I wish people knew that when we're working as journalists, we're not just working as one person, we're working as part of a team, and that team is active behind the scenes, and we're working to verify everything.
Another industry with standards is the medical industry.
Yes.
So we want to ask about a favorite doctor. Stephanie wants to know how your brother and mother took the book, and are you close with both of them?
I am close to both of them. I sent them advanced copies of the book. I sent them advanced chapters as I was working on it.
Talk to them about it.
And I talked to them about it a lot just to make sure that my memory aligned with theirs. And they were supportive of it, both of them. My mom was very supportive. I think she had a hard time because
we're in a
you're too comfortable.
We're in a green room, so there's snacks everywhere.
Nobody wants to see you eat. Okay.
All right, they're eating. I'm sure they're eating. Raise your hand if you're eating.
Marriage. My mom, I think, had a hard time because I think she feels a lot of the guilt from not being able to shield us from some of the uglier parts of our childhood. And I think she feels guilty for not standing up taller. But I think my mom's amazing. And I think she did amazing things. And I think she did her best. And so I don't want her to ever feel that this was any sort of condemnation on her parenting, because it wasn't. My brother was really supportive as well. I have the benefit of having a brother who is a medical doctor, hospital medicine, also a psychiatrist. So he's very good at understanding where someone's coming from and letting someone tell their truth. So they've been absolutely wonderful. And, you know, this book is complicated. It's hard. I know that, you know, it's probably going to be hard for my dad to read, but I don't want this in any way to be taken as a condemnation of my dad or settling a score or, my dad wasn't all bad and my dad wasn't all good. My dad was complicated, still is complicated. And my dad went through some horrible stuff herself. I mean, just living a life that was a lie for so long is awful. So when you do read it, I hope that you understand that people are complicated. Life is complicated. Childhoods are complicated. And even though there was some ugliness in mine, I don't know if I change any of it because it led me to where I am today. I've got a good career. I have a really great husband who I love so much. I've got 4 kids, 2 that I inherited from you, 2 more that we made together. And I think it's made me a stronger person having gone through that. It allowed me to know what I don't want to be, which is valuable.
Yes. We have Aaron Freese wants me to ask you, and others do as well, which of the 2 books were easier to write?
I thought Unbelievable was the hardest book in the world. I thought, oh my God, writing a book is the hardest thing I've ever done. How could I possibly do this? How can I get through this? I spent every night, I was up every weekend. I sat in my house and typed, and I was miserable. And that was so easy in comparison to this one. Writing a book with 2 little kids at home or pregnant with one of them is really, really difficult. Writing a book about yourself and your family, the stories that you never wanted to tell anyone, including not even to him. Oh my God, so much harder, so much harder.
Beth wants to know how MSNBC has a great number of programs with women as their anchors or women in them. And is this by design, or did it happen that way? Do you have any input there?
We just got really lucky. The best people for the job happened to be women. There was a great moment on the campaign trail in late 2015, early 2016, where, oh gosh, people started to notice that all of the campaign correspondents were women. It was me and Casey Hunt and Kristen Welker and Andrea Mitchell, Chris Jansing for a little while, Kelly O'Donnell as well, and Hallie Jackson, bunch of girls. And it didn't even hit us until somebody pointed it out. And I think that's so incredible that nobody thought, oh, it's just a bunch of women. We just all happened to be the best for the positions that we were in at the time. And that's the same thing that's happened at MSNBC with the women who populate the anchor chairs. They just happen to be the best people for the job, regardless of gender.
Shelley wants to know the hardest part of parenting so far.
Diapers. I hate diapers. You're going to say sleep. Sleep is really difficult. Our 3-year-old is so fun. Our 3-year-old used to sleep so well. And then when he almost turned 3, he just stopped sleeping. He'll wake up in the middle of the night now. Anytime between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., at some point he will wake up screaming, and he will run down the hall and he'll get into bed with us. And he doesn't just sleep vertically like a normal human being. He sleeps horizontally. So you'll wake up with his foot just in your face. He kicks you all night long.
He's a blender.
It's awful.
He turns like the blades of a blender in the bed. He's like, and the bed is not a king size California king. It's a queen bed. There's not enough room. I often get out and sleep on the couch or on the floor.
Yeah, my poor network news anchor husband sleeps on the floor.
It's bad. It's real bad.
Maria wants to know how your childhood prepared you to be the journalist and the foreign correspondent, the Trump correspondent, and now the anchor that you are today.
Oh, you got to read the whole book to get a good answer on that.
Queen of chaos.
But it is, I personally, I love when everything falls apart around me. I love breaking news. I love figuring it out. So if it's breaking news like a shooting on the subway, send me. I'll raise my hand first.
You hate the story, but you love the
of course,
being on it.
Goes without saying, hate the story. Nobody's rooting for bad news, but I do think that it's fascinating to watch things unfold in real time. And I think I get that from my childhood because it was so chaotic. And I find myself, I'm most calm when I'm in the middle of a storm.
Because
literally in the middle of a storm, I used to chase tornadoes, and
Tony,
the closer we got to the storm, the more zen I became.
Well, your parents used to literally pull you out of bed to get on the helicopter because they'd have to go and they didn't have childcare. It was a mom and pop shop. So it must feel like home to you.
It does.
Yeah. Tony, do most news journalists have an obsessive need to become a news junkie? Or is it just people like Katy that were raised that way?
You weren't raised that way.
No, I wasn't raised that way. I think everybody has a different path now. And I wouldn't call myself a news junkie. I'm interested in people. I'm interested in history. I'm interested in the big stories of our time, the sort of the shape of the moment we're in. I'm a failed academic. And this is sort of my way of doing a tenured professorship on a daily news show.
I always find it really interesting when people say that their parents grew up and they were accountants. I think, how did you get into news? Like, I just can't imagine another path into news.
I will say
that wasn't because you were born into it.
I will say, so the thing where I do think I have inherited something that makes me excited by breaking news, because I go to a lot of ugly stories and I go there quickly and I do what she does. Is my father was a drug dealer. I wrote a book about it. You can probably find it for free in the library there. And I realized at a certain point that drug dealing and reporting are similar on the body. What do I mean by that? My father, Big Tony, used to get money from somebody who's paid to go out and get a thing, bring it back, and then make you feel something, right? What does a drug do? It gives you a feeling. He goes somewhere, gets it, you feel something. What does a reporter do? Takes money, goes somewhere, gets a thing, information, gives it to you. Hopefully you feel something. And the feeling you get at traveling that journey, the going out and the coming back, I think my father and I have the very same beating heart in our chest, to tell you the truth.
If you're rolling your eyes at him, it's okay. I roll my eyes at my husband all the time. He's very clever.
It feels the same to me.
There's a saying about the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, which leads me to the next question. What traits from yourself do you see in Teddy and Eloise?
Oh, Teddy is, I don't know. Oh, Eloise, when she doesn't get her way, gets very cranky. She gets very angry. That's kind of me. Teddy, I think that he's so curious and he wants to know everything, and he's a mimic. And I remember feeling that way when I was a kid. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to be bigger and like the adults. And I get that sense from Teddy. He's trying really hard to emulate us.
He does do a lot of emulating. He does a lot of defying right now as well.
Well, it's normal 3-year-old behavior.
Yeah, but I think there's a particular
he's
relish.
Defying authority?
Particular relish. And I think journalists do need to be able to stand tall in the face of authority and not trust.
Totally.
Not be overly trusting.
We're on the cusp of the Y stage. We haven't quite got there yet.
He's going to be brutal in the Y stage. He's already brutal in the no stage. And Teddy, no, and then he does it.
They're great. We have so much fun with them.
So you talked about your decision to continue to work in the news field. And after thinking on abandoning this line of work during the Trump days, what caused you to come back or stay in it?
The mortgage, the kids.
No. I love it. I do.
There's nothing better.
I love it. It's and I've hoped that once we get a little bit farther out of once the pandemic really goes away, that we can get back to doing some of the things I love most. And I love anchoring, but I really love traveling. And I love going to a place and understanding that place and telling a story from that place. That's why I loved being a foreign correspondent so much. I got to travel the world and do things nobody else got to do, go places nobody else would go. I went to Banda Aceh, which is the westernmost point in Indonesia. It's a place under Sharia law. Very few Westerners go there. To the point where people were taking photos with me because I look so weird to them. And I found it to be fascinating. I was covering the anniversary of the 2005 tsunami and just the way the towns had rebuilt it and the way the people had persevered, even though some of them lost everything, not just their home, but their entire family. I spoke to one dad, it was wrenching. But I find getting to do that, having the privilege of telling that story and going to that place is the best part of this job. Absolutely the best part of this job. So I'm hoping we get back to that. And I'm hoping that we find a way to, my kids are going to inherit this country sooner than later. And I want to try hard to find a way to come to a shared sense of truth. And I know things are very divided and I know there's very loud voices, but there is a really big swath of the country that doesn't participate at all, doesn't vote, doesn't really pay attention. And if we try to find a way to get to those people, I think things would be a lot different than they are today. And that's I think a worthy goal.
Two more quick questions. How competitive are the two of you as far as journalism? And do you have recommendations of book titles for storytime books?
Oh, yes, we do. Okay, competitive. We're not really competitive.
No, we're not really competitive.
No.
Our organizations think that we're more competitive. There was when we had to do our shows from our own basement during the pandemic, it was naturally suggested that they put one camera
Just
in,
one camera.
share the
Just
cost,
share the camera.
and I would do the morning show, and then she would do her
So we
afternoon
don't have
show.
two cameras in a tiny space that can't even fit a pool table.
And NBC and CBS were like, no,
no,
they
no,
might
no.
need to be on at the same time.
As if anything would happen where at 2 p.m. he would still be on television, or at 8 a.m. I'd need to be on television. The world would really have to break into 1,000 pieces in order for him and I to broadcast at the same time.
So only rarely, I will say, do I have a piece of information or a concept for a story that I do not share with her because I don't want her to talk about it on TV.
I find that sometimes I get great fodder from you when you're kvetching about something or you're scratching an itch on a story. I think, oh, that's actually, maybe I should book on that.
Yeah.
There are times where I try to steal stuff from you.
Well, and sometimes I'll have an interview with somebody and I'll be like, that was a really good interview, and we're going to use 30 seconds of it, and they would be a good live guest. And I'd be like, if you're looking for this, yes, and vice versa.
Okay, children's books.
I mean, the classic obvious ones. Bodies Are Cool
is a great one
that Teddy really loves. He really went through an obsessive stage with Boys Dance.
It's just it's a book from the American Ballet Theater, and it's about boys doing ballet.
It's about ballet.
He loves it.
Loved it.
Bodies Are Cool is a great one too. He's into that. And then anything about trucks. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, the truck and trains at the moment. Big train obsession.
You
know what?
The Places You'll Go, because I think it's just, I never read it as a kid, or I don't remember reading it as a kid. And when I started reading it to Teddy, I just found that the advice in it was so good, even for me as a 38-year-old. I remember, I was having a hard time in my head and with my career, and it talks about highs and lows. Everyone will experience highs and lows. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes the whole world thinks you're great, and sometimes nobody's paying attention to you at all. And it helped me take a breath on all of the spinning thoughts that I had in my head.
I want to make one more recommendation. His current absolute favorite, because I'm not there in the morning, so she does mornings, and I often do the bedtime read.
Yeah.
His current absolute favorite for Teddy is Richard Scarry's original "What Do People Do All Day?"
Yeah.
Which is got
Although
some very gendered, very gendered.
We changed the genders on it because all of the women, the girls in the book,
they don't have jobs.
Moms.
They're all moms. But if you switch it all around, if you just change the genders, the descriptions of how things work, how things go from seed to table, how electricity is made, how trains operate, how planes work, coal fire plants or power plants, it's incredible.
Wait, I'm gonna Google one of my other favorites.
It came out in the 60s.
Eloise loves 10 Little Fingers and 10 Little Toes.
Yeah. She loves that.
Where did my hat go? Who writes those weird surrealist?
Someone wants to know what adult books you read.
Oh, they want adult books.
I thought it was
no, they wanted children's too.
Okay, I've got a lot.
We're
both reading John le Carre right now. Obsessed with it, love it, really into it. Tiziano Terzani wrote a book called A Fortune Teller Told Me many years ago. And it is a brilliant travel log memoir from his time covering Southeast Asia mostly for a year, by car, by boat, by train, by bus, by freight at one point, and by walking, because a fortune teller told him in the year, I think it was 2003, that he would die in an air accident. So he was grounded. And it's fascinating. It was right as the world was changing in Asia, as they were losing some of their ingrained culture, and it was turning over to, Western strip malls and air conditioning. Really, really wonderful moment in time. Vladimir, we just read by Julia May Jonas. So good. Great twist. What else?
I like essays. There's a book by Megan Dahm called The Problem with Everything.
Oh yeah, this is good.
Which is really good.
We have a book called Why You Should Stop Reading the News.
Which I bought at an airport, and it was interesting. It's by a journalist in the UK, a columnist. He doesn't really convince me, but his takeaway point is that your mind is cluttered with things that don't affect your life, and read less news. Really,
I'm reading Dune right now, getting into it.
John is a middle school educator, and he's curious about the impact educators have on the life of others. Can you each share an experience where an educator was there for you at a time when you needed them the most? He also says, Tony, your coverage of Uvalde really impacted me. Thank you for your compassion you showed to those families.
Thank you.
Oh God, there were so many moments I have with educators, and with a variety of them, from my high school environmental sciences teacher rooting me on, to my 10th grade English teacher, telling me it was okay when I gave a oral report on Wuthering Heights and I broke out in hives. I was so scared to talk in public. My art teachers, I loved doing art. I was an art studio major in college at first. They were always really supportive, and they for me, they were the most understanding and the most nuanced of all my teachers. But I mean, all of them, they were all amazing. I was very lucky. I always had great teachers.
Yeah. I'll get emotional if I talk too much about teachers, but my fourth grade teacher,
Your mom.
My mom's a public school teacher, retired she's 72 now. She retired at 70. Was a special education teacher. My aunt was a gym teacher, or excuse me, she always corrects me on this. Physical education teacher, and also in public schools. But in terms of people who are not my family, my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Greenberg, required us to memorize a poem and recite it in front of the class. I went through all the Shel Silverstein. It helped me with memory. It helped me with the rhythm of language. It helped me with public speaking. It was probably the most impactful thing any teacher did, was just force us to do this thing that nobody wanted to do. And it was really hard and embarrassing for the first couple of weeks, but by the end of the year, we were real pros at it. I thought it was so good.
Forcing you to get out of your box and out of your comfort zone is always the best.
Yeah, always good. And then later on, actually, in graduate school, I want to count this because, and this happened at other points as well. I had a teacher tell me I wasn't in the right place doing the right thing. I was in academia. I thought I wanted to be a professor. And she was reading my papers, and she said, it's pretty clear that you don't like research, you like writing. And so you've got to make a big decision here. I don't think this is where you should be. And I was angry and momentarily disgruntled about it all. How dare she? And then I looking back on it, she was totally right. And I left and I started writing for the old Newsweek when it was still a thing. And it changed my life. So the honesty that she gave me was important. And then Mrs. Greenberg really gave me the foundation.
Can we just give a shout out to Gwen right now? Because Gwen, you've done a very good job. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Of interrupting us as we start to ramble, but like not in an abrupt way, in a move the conversation along. And that's a really hard thing for an interviewer to do. So good job.
The questions are really tight and the rhythm is wonderful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It would not be the interview it is without either of you. You both bring wonderful things to this. And Katy brings wonderful topics to talk about with your book. We're anxious for a third book.
No,
but it doesn't have to be so serious. It can be fun.
And the next book I do is going to be fun. Maybe we'll do one together. It's going to be funny. Maybe it'll be about marriage. He said, she said.
I want to do a book about how planes fly, because it turns out we don't actually know. I'm serious. Google it.
Good.
There's no theory of lift that makes any sense.
Wow. Well, we're looking forward to these books, guys. You got to get back at that typewriter or the keyboard.
All right.
Which means that you need to go home and rest after you have some more snacks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will have some snacks.
We all love you. We watch Tony in the morning and you in the afternoon. And I think your voices are very important in the world of journalism. You bring much to the table for all of us that can't be there to witness the horrific things or the wonderful things that you report on. And that's why citizen journalism will never work. We need professionals.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you
We
for
wish
your
we could do it in
work.
person.
And for your words and your time. And go home and read a bedtime story.
We'll try. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Gwen.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye,
And
Hudson.
everybody go
Bye.
read the book. It's well worth it.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you. All
Bye.
right.
Good night.
Leaving meeting.